All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Amna Shah. I'm the MLA for Surrey City Centre and the chair of the Select Standing Committee on Private Bills and Private Member Bills and All-Party Committee of the Legislative Assembly. I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting here today on the Legislative Precinct here in Victoria, which is located on the territory of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples known as the Songhees and Esquimalt Nations. Bill M202, Eligibility to Hold Public Office Act, was recommitted to our committee on May 15th. The Legislative Assembly instructed this committee to reconsider clauses 1, 2, and 3 of the bill for the purposes of considering amendments to those clauses. Now, we are required to report back to the Legislative Assembly on this bill today. And so, following the instructions of the Legislative Assembly, the purpose of today's meeting is to consider any amendments that members may have for those clauses. So we're going to dive right into clause-by-clause consideration of Bill M202. And so starting with Clause 1, do members have any amendments that they would like to propose to this clause? Jessie?
Thank you, Chair. So the first amendment that I have is to Clause 1, and everyone should have a copy of it in their bundle. The clause, what it does is we just want to make sure that the intention of the legislation is reflected in what was presented by Darlene, and also reflected by the letter that we received from the Attorney General's office earlier this month that was received after we had closed initial consideration on this bill. So just to make sure that it's in accordance with good law. And the first change is to Clause 1. So we are ensuring that 1AI is reflected within the meaning of the community charter, that the definition of mayor or councillor of a municipality is reflected within the meaning of a community charter versus the Local Government Act. And also reflects that a mayor or councillor in the City of Vancouver under the meaning of Vancouver Charter. In 1A3, there is a change to park board as it has an actual meaning. It needs to be capitalized there. In 1A4, a trustee school is struck out so that it aligns with the definition and the usage of the word in the School Act. And same with 1A5, it's taken to a local trustee, which is the terms that are used within the meaning of the Island Trust Act. So it's all just to accord with existing legislation and to ensure that we are covering all offices, local elected offices that were intended by the member who introduced the legislation.
Great. On the amendment, is there any discussion? Yes, Trevor.
So I understand this and I understand what's put forward here, but we haven't done any consultation with the City of Vancouver. Like we have prior on when we were doing this line by line. Island Trust, the same thing. So did we reach out to any of these organizations before, or is there ability to have them come in and do consultation, or is that?
Yeah, so I hear your concerns, member. We are on a timeline here where we do have to report back to the House during regular House business. And so, yep.
So if we're on so does the timeline mean that that comes at the sacrifice of due diligence? Is that what you're suggesting? I don't, like, just because we're on a timeline, we do have an obligation to get things right.
Okay, I hear your comments. Are there any other comments? Yes, Mabel.
Yeah, I think in terms of expectation with respect to the bills and the process now, private members' bills, and this will be the first one to go through. And in terms of ensuring that the wording that we use in the meeting is consistent within the context of existing legislation, I think that's an expectation in terms of that's how I read this, in terms of ensuring that it aligns. So I'm in favor with it.
Are there any further comments, Han?
Yeah, so I do have the same concern as well. I'm not, 100% opposed to it, but anything that I think in a democracy world and the expectation from the public of electing all of us here is always have a public consultation whenever there's something coming up. It is a significant change because it actually covers not the local government act, but the community act. And even right now, Vancouver and Park Board, et cetera, and the Islands Trust, we have not done any consultation, basically. I understand we have a tight timeline, but I echo with Trevor, like a tight timeline doesn't mean we need to pass anything without consultation, because that's not what Canada or BC is supposed to be. Timeline, we can change it. We can always change it. We can always refer back to the House and ask for extension. And I think we need to make it right, because this is a law. This is a bill, right? So I think we need to at least do any bill that we come forward to our committee, we had a 14 days consultation period. And that was set to make sure the public had a say. Right now, we're basically, I'm sorry, we are having a tight timeline, so it doesn't matter what you guys think. So I just don't think that's right. Maybe they support it, right? If they do support it, and then maybe we can put that into our consideration, and maybe we can support it as well. But I think public consultation is one of the key pillar in our community and in our democracy. So just because we have a tight timeline doesn't mean we should pass anything without consultation, because that's a really bad starting for our community. I just have a PD on that.
Jesse, and then Mabel.
Yeah, so in terms of, just with respect to the role of consultation in the bills and public process, and well, specific, I would say, for this committee is certainly that's important. It's to provide input to us as the committee. We fundamentally have the responsibility to make the decision and to enact, in this case, the bill. So that's just my, we don't have to consult on every single aspect. And so that's just in terms of the role of public consultation in terms of this committee. And so, my reading of it and expectation is that the meanings and definitions are consistent within the context of existing legislation. So that's my reading of it, and that's my expectation. It's certainly not a perfect process, but I think in terms of as we sort out, moving forward, I'm in favor of the amendment.
I'll go Jesse and then Jeremy.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that we're, the conversation I think is getting bigger than the actual definition changes, and I don't want to make it be extending out of the scope. When you look at 1A, 3, 4, and 5, it's simply to reflect the definitions within existing legislation. To say that because we are capitalizing Park Board to reflect the words that are already in legislation, that we'd need to consult with the Park Board would be absurd. Same when you look at trustee or local trustee, it's just definitions that are already used in legislation. So there isn't a need for further consultation. Who would you consult with in ACT? Further, when you look at the addition of the Vancouver Charter, we've had first reading on this bill, second reading on this bill. We've had discussion, presentation from the presenter. We've had consultations. At no point was there ever an intention to leave out Vancouver out of this legislation. We can go back and read the Hansard. There was never an intention of that. So to reflect that now, I think is disingenuous, really. So I think the intention of this is to reflect the changes to make this good law, which was points that were made by folks on the other side in chamber themselves. So I think we should reflect that intention and make good law and make sure that the bill reflects that.
Jeremy?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I feel like we've been through a process on this. We've taken input. I don't think we ever set out to have a full consultation with municipalities, regional districts, park board, school boards, or Islands Trust. So I feel like we've been through that process, and this this is a tidying up of something that we've taken a fair bit of input on and made a decision on. I know it's not in the amendment, but I do have concerns with any other prescribed elected office in terms of First Nations, and so on the record, it would be good to hear the limitations of this, as they could be applied to by cabinet to any other group within the purview of the province. But as far as the amendments go, I think we've been through our process and taken the consultation that we have a duty to take.
Any further comments? Right, so the question is the amendment to Clause 1. Shall the amendment pass? Aye. The amendment's carried. Shall Clause 1 as amended pass? Aye. Clause 1 as amended is carried. Right, so we'll move on to Clause 2. Do members have any amendments that they would like to propose to Clause 2? Jesse?
I also have the amendment signed. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair. So the amendment that I'm proposing to Clause 2 is also just in line with the changes that were brought forth by the letter from the Attorney General, which is to provide certainty to when the disqualification would occur of an individual that was holding two offices. So once they're elected to the Legislative Assembly and the writ is returned, that's when that would implement. So that just gives certainty as to, two outlines that subject to subsection 3, if a person who holds an local elected office becomes a member of the Legislative Assembly, despite the act under which the local elected office is held, the person is conclusively deemed to have resigned and that local elected office on the day of the writ of election for the electoral district for which the person is elected is returned under section 26(2)(c) of the Election Act. Clause 2, subsection 3 is in addition that if on the date this act receives royal assent, a person who holds a local elected office is also a member of the Legislative Assembly despite the act under which the local elected office is held, the person is conclusively deemed to have resigned that local elected office on the date this act receives royal assent. And for Clause 2, subsection 4, for certainty, a local elected office is vacant on the date of resignation under this section as if the resignation occurred under and in accordance with the act that applies to local elected office. So this, the additional clauses that are in the amendment just specify when the election of in a new election, when an individual that holds two offices is elected, when that resignation would take effect, which is at the return of the writ. And then currently, if there's individuals that are holding two locally elected offices, that as soon as this legislation receives a royal assent, it would become impactful that they have, in essence, resigned from that other local elected office. So again, it's just a housekeeping piece to ensure that we have timelines that can be referred to in order to make the bill be able to be implemented.
All right, thank you. Is there any discussion on this amendment? Seeing as none, the question is the amendment to Clause 2. Shall the amendment pass? Aye. The amendment is carried. Shall Clause 2 as amended pass? Aye. Clause 2 as amended is carried. Now we'll move on to Clause 3. Thank you. All right, do members have any amendments that they would like to propose to Clause 3? Jesse?
Thank you, Chair. So the final amendment I have is to Clause 3 and to add an additional subsection to Clause 3, which allows, which says, without limiting subsection 1, the Lieutenant Governor and Council may make regulations prescribing elected public offices for the purposes of paragraph B of the definition of local elected office in section 1. So all this is doing, again, is in line with the letter from the Attorney General. All this is doing is allowing Clause 1, subsection B to be able to be enforced and to be applicable because it requires the Lieutenant Governor and Council to be able to give those powers and regulation powers to Cabinet.
Thank you. On the amendment, is there any discussion? Seeing none, the question is the amendment to Clause 3. Shall the amendment pass? Aye. The amendment is carried. Shall Clause 3 as amended pass? Aye. Clause 3 as amended is carried. Okay, Jesse?
I move that the chair report Bill M202 complete with amendment.
Members have heard the question. Those in favor indicate aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate nay. Motion is carried. I will report this bill to the House. Could I get now a motion for adjournment? So moved. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carried. This committee now stands adjourned.